Welcome down to my 9-foot homemade oak bar. Pour yourself a cold one. You are listening to Bucks in the Basement. My name's Chris, and Craig here is the biggest Pirates fan you'll ever meet. Let's talk Pirates baseball now. Welcome to Bucks in the Basement.
Now I see the changes in this town. They change, they say one thing, but then the next day it's different. They change, but they don't know what they want. All they do is change. Going left, going right, travel day, travel night. That's where we'll go. No excuses, no goodbyes, no one cries, no one lies. We'll never know.
There is someone to blame in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Everybody has their opinions, where the fault lies, who's doing what wrong. Maybe we'll get to the bottom of that tonight. Maybe we'll just have a good baseball conversation. Bringing in, for the first time, Chris George. You may see him out there in the Twitter sphere, the X sphere. His handle is at CRGWV1. Chris, how you doing today, sir?
Well, I could be doing better, but you know what? I'm doing good.
Yeah, I mean, we're watching baseball, and I think that there was something out there that Bill James put out, a tweet or a post, whatever you want to call it, a little bit ago, where it was, if your team's in the cellar, you're not worrying about games because you're expecting to lose. If your team's on top, you're not worrying about games because you know that they'll come back and, get put off a winning streak. When your team's really in the thick of things, you're living and dying with every pitch, with every game. And as Pirates fans, it has not been going well, for the past week or so here. And we had the trade deadline. We have, some old stuff being brought up, some new stuff being brought up, new guys being brought in, Shelton's management decisions being challenged, Charrington's roster construction. But I'm going to start kind of with maybe a little bit of the things that were going on in the game tonight, which are a microcosm, but then, can be expanded to the 3,000 feet view, where you have, the decisions that are being made about, who's continuing to hit when they haven't been hitting. I mean, I know Yasmani Grandal has been hitting a little bit better, but is allowed to stay in there in pressure situations. You have, Connor Joe, who everybody knows that Connor Joe is probably my favorite Pittsburgh Pirate at this moment. I just like him as a ball player, as a person. I still believe he is a Major League ball player, but has been on the struggle bus for a couple months here. And then you have, a hot hitter in like Joey Bart sitting on the bench. And in a close game like this, you never give him the call. What were you thinking tonight, Chris, when that was happening?
I put a tweet out right after the game referencing that. You got a chance. You're in the 10th inning. You're down at that point. And also you're in extra innings. You got to unload the gun. I mean, you got to do what you can to go win that game. Now, what I don't know is if Bart and Dele Cruz were either available or not. I would assume they were available. Both played last night, especially Bart, who has been one of your better hitters as of late. Is a right-handed bat who hits left-handed pitching well. I thought in that situation there with Grandal up, I thought that was the perfect opportunity to go to Joey Bart in that situation and pinch hit. And if Bart's successful, wonderful. And if he's not, you go down fighting with all your bullets, right? And this has not been the first time. It's happened multiple times this year in situations like this. And I just feel like at other times in the past, you go down, you lose, and you're like, did we go down losing with our gun loaded, or was it empty? I still think there were a couple bullets left in the chamber.
I can't disagree with you there, Chris. And like you said, it's definitely stuff that happened before. And that's where, like, you don't want to talk about stuff that, just happened in one game because, baseball is a funny thing. One day a team will come out and, score 16 runs, and you can't say the offense is back because the next, day they'll come out and they'll score 0 runs. So there's not things, but with Shelton, the one thing I never really blame on him is the pitching decisions as far as the bullpen goes. Just because, there are guys that have performed at times, and you do want to continue to lean on guys, but then also he doesn't always have like a array of people to allow to pitch. For a while there, you had Holderman out at the beginning of the year, Bednar out at times, Carmen Majinski's out right now. Ryan Barucki's been out since the beginning. Dowry Moretta's been out since spring training. So at some point in time, some of these guys have to actually perform. If a guy is dying out there and he doesn't go out and pull him, then I can see that, kind of conversation happening. But when people are saying, well, why is Holderman going back, in this situation? My question to them that I would kind of point back at them, and I may point at you, is just like, well, who else is he supposed to use? There's really nobody else available.
Tonight, yes. I think the only thing you could have done was maybe have Ortiz available for this game, because I really thought Mitch Keller should be pitching tomorrow. And I really think that even more now, because you got to have your horse out there tomorrow to end a skid. And Ortiz could have been available. But I think the biggest problem is not only you didn't have anybody else available, because that guys that went last night, especially like Kyle Nichols, he threw 2 2/3, almost 50-some pitches. He wasn't going to pitch tonight. So you had to go with Holderman. And I think right now this bullpen's taxed. I really do. I think the guys that are down there in the bullpen outside of David Bednar, they're taxed. They've been used a ton this year. And we can question, starting pitching decisions about letting pitchers maybe go a little bit deeper into games. We've seen that with Paul Skeens and Mitch Keller. That's about it. You're seeing some quality starts here and there, but you're seeing a lot of forwarding starts. And if you think about it, in this skid alone, we've had 2 games being delayed by rain that has caused starting pitchers to come out. Therefore, your bullpen gets extra work, and then you're taxed in a game like tonight. I think what they should have done is brought up an arm out of the minor leagues today before the game, just to give them a fresh arm today, because you have tonight's game, which just finished, and then you're back at it less than 24 hours tomorrow. So I definitely think they'll bring someone in for tomorrow. But I thought it would have been good if they brought someone in tonight and maybe give you a fresh arm in that situation. And the only thing you can do with the current pitchers available down that bullpen right now is maybe mix the roles up a little bit, go with more matchups instead of more predetermined roles. And I think the biggest thing, and I've said this all year, and people that have coached baseball will understand this, David Bednar needs to pitch a little bit more. There's times when he'll go twice a week, and that's it. He'll throw 2 innings a week, and there's sometimes he'll go 3 straight or 2 out of 3 or something like that. Lately, he hasn't had a lot of time out there, and I think, and I know for a fact, pitchers like Bednar, out of the bullpen, they get rusty. It happens. If you don't pitch often, you will get a little rusty. It's different just going throwing a side session. You like those game reps. I think that's why Chapman has gotten better as the year has gone on, because he's had more of a consistent outing here and there, maybe 2 days in a row or 2 out of 3 or whatever the case may be, where earlier in the season he wasn't in the greatest shape. He struggled with his command. And I think Bednar was in that same situation in early April. So that's all. That's the only input I've got there, is a situation like that. But tonight, with what you had available and Ortiz going tomorrow, the only other guy maybe you could have thrown there was maybe Bailey Falter for an inning. But I don't think that was going to happen after last night, because there was no one available at all whatsoever.
Yeah, we've had some weird circumstances lately. And with, I saw that Dan Zangrilli put out a tweet earlier that, David Bednar had, 19 consecutive saves, has had 4 saves I looked at in his last 7 appearances. But like you said, those guys have their rhythm. I always look at the walks and hits per innings pitched. If anybody's ever listened to the show, Chris, you've ever that's kind of where I go, just because if you're putting guys on, if you're giving up hits, I can't look at, people are saying, well, we have a bottom, I think it was like 3 ERA in the bullpen for the season. Andrew Destin put out over 4, which, I mean, obviously isn't a great thing, but a lot of that is caused by the walks, giving up the hits, getting guys on. David Bednar in those 7 appearances with those 4 saves has a 1.71 whip. He's almost putting on or giving up 2 hits pretty much per inning, per appearance. Yeah. It's not something that's been great. And to your point about Aroldis Chapman, before we got on here, I was looking at him. His last 15 games, he has a 1.02 whip. Last 7 games, 0.71 whip. So he, over his last 7 appearances, has put on, less than a runner per inning. Something that he was, absolutely struggling with at the beginning of the season. And that's where, I know that, the bullpen pitchers the relievers are never going to be completely consistent. Like, you're going to have your blowups. You're going to have your hiccups. I mean, look at, Tanner Scott tonight for the Padres, who, has been lights out for the Marlins. That's why the Padres went and got him. The last time, we saw him, he looked amazing. And tonight he kind of, he just had a bad outing, but, consistently over those times, the numbers should kind of work together. And it kind of seems like for the Pirates, you don't have, 2 or 3 guys in that bullpen that you can really rely on for a period of time. It's either one guy here, one guy there. And I believe there was maybe 2 games in a row, and I believe it was back in June, where they went there, Holderman, Chapman, Bednar. And this isn't a video game. That's not something that, is going to work all the time. But it is definitely upsetting to see your closer come out. We've been at the games when Bednar comes in and the Renegade plays and the lights go out. And to give up that home run, I'm sitting in my chair watching the game, and I just put my head down because I'm just I almost kind of saw it coming. What do you think, Chris?
Jim Leland was here many years, and I don't know if you got to watch some of his teams. I'm sure you did. It was a lot of years Jim Leland didn't have a closer, and at times he had a closer, and he would mix and match because of what we're talking about. There's nothing wrong with letting Bednar maybe pitch the 7th or the 8th and letting Chapman pitch the 9th. Mix and match a little bit, because the most important pitch in baseball is a strike. And everyone's like, well, yeah, it's a strike. I don't care if it's curveball, fastball, slider, change, whatever it is. And right now you're seeing a lot of fastball command issues with Bednar, early in counts. And then he's trying to come back with his secondary stuff to either A, get batters out, or get back in the count until he gets better fastball command. You saw the same stuff with Chapman earlier in the season when we're all sitting there saying, well, Colin Holderman's got to be pitching the 8th inning because Chapman's struggling, blah, 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 blah. And there's nothing wrong with mixing and matching. I think that's something Derek Shelton has to do the rest of the year, is find a pulse on who is the hot guy now, who has the best command down there, and put them in those situations in the late inning games with high leverage situations to help this team. Because, let's face it, we're getting towards the end of the year. There's 50-some games left. A lot of these guys have a lot of work. I mean, Chapman's been used a lot this year. Holderman's been used a good bit this year. And you're getting to the dog days of August, so to speak, right now.
Yeah, and I honestly believe two things that I can't stand in baseball. I hate that the save was created. It's one of my least favorite things. I think that it's something that, it can you can tabulate stuff and you want to see how well a pitcher performed in different stuff. But when they made it so that you could, with under 3 runs, and if it's 4 runs, but the tying runs in, the on circle, and you give up 3 runs, but you still keep the game and you get the save. It's just it's goofy stuff to me, that it's like a guy can perform poorly and still get credit for something. To me, that's very goofy. The other thing is, I do not know what a check swing is anymore, because half the time that I see stuff out there is that I'm like, oh my God, that guy swung. His wrist broke, that, the bat came around, everything like that. And it'll be no swing. And another time a guy holds it back. I'm like, there's no way that's a swing. And the guy will be Yep, that's a swing. And it's something that I'm like, if we're gonna put like, cameras everywhere and put sensors everywhere, I want to sensor it like the end of the bat or something. And if it comes past the first base line, that we will know that it's a swing. Because so get rid of save, ban the wave, and put a chip at the end of the bat. That's kind of where I'm at with those three things.
Yeah, you're starting to see home plate umpires make that call more so now than ever, which I have a problem with because they don't see it as well as what the umpires at first and third do, depending if a righty or lefty's up. I'd rather them still do the appeal and make the call that way, and have the home plate umpire to make that call. He can't see it. Now he may see it. If he sees them go clear around, you got to call it. It's just like in football. If you see someone fumble and it's loose, you call it. But if you didn't see it, you can't go back and call it because you say, I didn't see him fumble. I can't call something I didn't see. So I think that's something, you mentioned a check swing. I think home plate umpires need to give a little bit more leeway here and let the base umpires make those calls, because I think it was new. And Brian Reynolds has been involved in this more than once where he's been called for a check swing. He clearly didn't go around, or it was borderline. And for the umpire to make that call, that's hard to do. I don't know how you make that call. I really don't.
It's a very goofy thing.
It's hard.
But getting into kind of like what's going on, right now with the Pittsburgh Pirates, and we see a player that I talked about last night when I was rambling to myself down here was, a player like G1 Bay. It's like we let that ride out. Like, how long do we let that continue when, he's a guy that can't really play a great center field, doesn't have the arm for right field like we saw here. I know that we have, some new guys down the system. Sawinski's still down there, but hasn't been hitting real well since he's been down. I saw that Nick York, one of our acquisitions that we got for Quinn Priester, played his first minor league game ever in center field tonight, which kind of confused me because we got Billy Cook, who is actually an outfielder, infielder, and didn't put him in center field. But it kind of seems like, there are some guys on this roster. I mean, I feel like Jared Triolo's just been, for probably a bad dad joke, but dying on the limb, because he's just been out there just hanging off by himself. I know they gave him some time off to get in the cages to try to get right, has come back, and his swing just hasn't been there. Plays great defense. So, he's a late inning defensive replacement, but other than that, it's like, do we still continue to ride these guys at this point in time, or is there a need for a change? Call people up, see what they have. Both Cook, and York have to be added to the 40-man this offseason. So, I don't know if that's the greatest thing to put a rookie into when you're actually still trying to win, or is it like, but they're hitting hot? I don't know, Chris. What do you think we do here?
I think of all the guys you mentioned, only G1 Bay has something that adds to the major league team as a guy on the bench that can pinch run in situations with speed. I don't want him starting. I don't want him playing 2 or 3 days a week. I just want him to be that type of guy that can come in and pinch run, or maybe play the field for a couple innings when need be here and there, or maybe he has to bat. Everything with him is just going 1,000 miles per hour. You can see it. The game is way too fast for him. He has yet to settle in to the game at this level. He goes down AAA and hits as well as anybody in the minor league system. But he gets to Pittsburgh, and it's like zoom, zoom, zoom. That happens to a lot of young players. He just has to settle down. But I think him sitting there watching the game and being just a bench player only, will help him with the game slowing down. As for the others, Triolo can't hit a lick. His mechanics to plate are brutal. I don't know. He can't hit. He never hit coming up to the minor league. He's a good defensive player. But there's guys that, like you mentioned, Nick York, Billy Cook, you can bring in to be that type of player that can play 2 or 3 games a week, be that backup player when you need to, whether it's in the outfield or infield. I think as the season goes on, you got to bring up a guy or two here and there to give them some looks, get them a taste of it, because next year you're going to probably need 1 or 2 of those guys, and you're probably going to need them now here throughout the season. And Guys like G1 Bay can sit there and watch. He doesn't need to go back down AAA and play every day. He's done that. He's better just sitting and watching. Guys like Nick York and Billy Cook, they need to play every day. And if they can come up and get a little taste, great. But those two still need to play every day. But you've got to make some changes here. Palacios, huge loss. That huge loss, another injury setback for him. That guy was instant energy. He did a little bit with the bat, more so than some of the guys we've seen. He's out. Nick Gonzalez is coming back. He's been the biggest loss of the freaking season where we're at right now. We haven't replaced him. We've seen Alika Williams. It's Jared Triolos about 4 inches shorter. I mean, so yeah, I think Nick York and Billy Cook might be the next two up. I just have to wait and see.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of this depends on, I guess, like Nick Gonzalez's rehab, which will be starting, next week, and how he's able to do stuff. He did struggle a little bit. Looking at the numbers over his last 100 plate appearances, hadn't been hitting as well. But when he was hitting, it seemed to be in those key moments, and that is stuff, that's invaluable. And his defense, I've said this, a few times on the show already, but was a lot better than I remember watching him as he came up through the minors. He didn't hurt us as much as I thought he possibly could have at times. But yeah, he seemed to be, more comfortable, in the position. But yeah, I mean, this to me, it's kind of going, is what's happening now, is this more of, Shelton's management and lineups with the team? Because I know him and Donnie Kelly. I mean, this is something everybody knows at this point in time, is him and Donnie Kelly sit down a week to 2 weeks in advance and they write out their lineups. And unless, an injury or something else comes up, I mean, they're sticking with it. And they're looking at the potential matchups and different stuff like that. But it's like, okay, well, this guy's going to have his rest day here on this day. And that's why we as fans get so frustrated, because it's like, okay, this guy finally got going for like 4 games in a row, and now he's sitting and, is seeing the ball really well. Why are we doing that? Doesn't really make a lot of sense. But then, I mean, you also see that Cherington is the one that, kind of brought in Grandal, brought in Michael A. Taylor, and brought in some of these other guys that you're looking at the lineup and you're like, man, 7, 8, 9, some nights 6, 7, 8, 9 are a near automatic out at times. So what side of the fence do you maybe lie on more? I think it can be a little bit of both. You can walk the line with this, but what say you, Chris?
I agree with you 100% there. And first off, baseball is not a game you script ever. I mean, if you want to script the day before in certain situations, that's fine. But you've got to have a feel for the game. And you're going to have. And you see a lot of Shelton's shortcomings come when things kind of go off script. Let's go back to Sunday, for example. Let's go back to Friday. Sometimes things just don't go as planned. And you got to have a feel and be able to make adjustments as the game goes. Go with the hot guy. If you got a batting order, I like analytics. I do. I think there's a place for it. I just don't think it needs to be your whole team revolving around it. For example, Rowdy Tellez and O'Neill Cruz are much better in the last few weeks against left-handed pitching than what they are for the season. Have a feel for what they've done against left-handed pitching here lately. And I think you're seeing a little bit more with that with Cruz batting in the bottom of the order against lefties. Have a feel with the lineup as far as who do you think goes where. We know Brian Reynolds is locked into the 2 spot. I almost laughed because I think it's part of his contract, because I think that's part of his deal, which it isn't. But but have a feel. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. I mean, I would love to see him stay in that top of the order, whether it's the 1 spot or wherever. And McCutchen, I know he's done a good job at the leadoff spot, but you need some of that thunder in the middle, more so than what you're getting from guys like Kiner-Falefa and even Rowdy Tellez, whose OPS is still in the 600s. Okay, I'm just saying, if you want to mix and match the lineup, do it by a feel and who's hot and who's playing well and who's got the hot hand. That's baseball, man. Baseball's hard. You can look at the numbers all day. We talked about pitching. and the bullpen ERA and this and that, blah, blah, blah. But look what's happened in the last 27 innings. They've allowed 19 runs. That's real. You go back over calendar year, yeah, the numbers may, but we're talking about right now. I can't worry about what happened in April and May. I'm worried about right now. It's August. So, I'm not on a firing streak here of anybody, but I think that's something that is this organization needs to do is they need to sit down and be more cognizant of what we've got tomorrow coming up, Arizona. Okay, and then go to the next day and maybe look at it here. Okay, we know what our rotation is going to be. Let's look how this goes. And let's just go day by day and have a feel and go with who the hot hand is and mix and match that way, both A, with your offense and B, with your bullpen. And honestly, Mitch Keller should be starting tomorrow. That is my biggest pet peeve of the week. It is his 5th day. He threw 60 pitches back on Saturday. He needs to pitch tomorrow. He is your number one pitcher. He is your veteran. He is your horse. You've lost, 5 out of 6 now? He's got to start tomorrow, and you can bump Ortiz to Friday. Got to happen, but it won't. Because it was predetermined. It was predetermined.
And the goofy thing is that, I mean, if they're going by analytics, I've looked this up a million times on Mitch Keller, is Mitch Keller pitches better when he pitches on his regular schedule, on his 4 days of rest, on the 5th day, than he does when he is pushed back. He usually has most of his bad outings when he is given, kind of those extra days of rest. When you're talking about earlier in the episode, about a guy like David Bednar that, needs that consistency, kind of needs that, that feel. It's like, I need to get in this game because I don't need to be sitting there for an inning or two. And in David Bednar's case, for 2 or 3 pitches, trying to work out that rust a little bit or work out those kinks of kind of where I'm at. You just kind of need to go out there, be in the rhythm, because I mean, that's for pitchers, that's a real thing. So that's very strange to me with that. And with Cherington, I mean, the roster construction that I don't really know. I think that there are things that he has done well. I mean, we have to give him credit for Joey Bart. I think that if Michael A. Taylor was your 4th outfielder and was a defensive replacement, I think that is an amazing pickup. I think Isaiah Kiner-Falefa might end up being one of those guys who could be one of those darlings for Pirates fans because, number one, he has a tie to Ralph Kiner, and then number 2, I believe he's just one of those good, solid ball players and who they wanted Jared Triolo to be. And I feel like, and I've said this a few times, and I'm probably sure I said it last night, but I was a little bit delirious because it was early in the morning, and I don't usually stay up this late. But it kind of seems like that they picked up Isaiah Kiner-Falefa because Jared Triolo didn't become the player they wanted him to be this year. I feel like they picked up Brian De La Cruz because Edward Olivares wasn't the player, they kind of predicted him to be this year. I think that Ben Cherington, just in my estimation, needs to be right the first time a few times here rather than, having to maybe make up for some little things that are going on maybe with scouting or with players or with coaching or whatever it may be. But it's like you're taking a second shot at something rather than having, that type of player for the entire season. I mean, like I said, I could be crazy. I'm not a GM, but it's just the way that I look at things that it's just like, it always feels like that he's trying to, going out and getting, they wanted Josh Flemings to be somebody. So they go out and get another left-handed guy who's pretty much had the same type of career that, Josh Fleming had, but he's not working out. But that's being a GM, I guess.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll say, I would hate to be in his shoes as a GM because we know the financial constraints he has to play by. He's not dealing with a full deck of cards when it comes to what the resources they have and what they're allowed to spend. We know that. We're not going to get into that. Everyone knows that topic. So doing more with less, and that's hard. You've got to figure out, it didn't work last year, but this year I think some of the moves have been a little bit better, but trying to do more than less. You're seeing that with the bullpen, waiver wire acquisitions here. The best 2 teams in the last, 10 years or so, the Baltimore Orioles and the Tampa Bay Rays are 2 teams that have figured out how to do more with less. Now, Baltimore in the last year or 2 have had a ton of guys come up through their system that are big-time talented players. But they picked up a lot of waiver wire guys that were guys nobody wanted, and it's worked out. So I think you look at it from the top. starts with the top of the organization, goes down with your scouts, your player development. What do we want here that fits what we do, and kind of go from there. It's not an easy job. It really isn't. And, and I think injuries have really played a factor here in a lot of that, especially with the pitching staff and the bullpen. But again, we've got to do something in the offseason. The Pirates just have to find a way to be in the middle of the pack when it comes to hitting, because they're starting pitching going forward. And if they can do a better job within the bullpen construction, they just have to find a way to be in the middle of the pack when it comes to hitting. And this team can do a lot of good things next year. But that's next year. You're not going to improve on that this year. You can only try to keep fighting the rest of the year. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting topic you bring up, and I think that's a topic for the off season that we can talk about for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of like something that goes through my head. First time on this show, Chris Lanuti, my co-host for 5 years here, knows me that kind of my mind works like a washing machine. Things kind of spin around, and it's like you go to reach for something, you don't know what's going to pop out. But just one more thing to kind of talk about here is we're talking towards the off season. I know that people are kind of getting down here. We've seen teams in years collapse and, fall out of favor. And then the team that's behind them finally gets something, gets a spark plug, gets turned on, and is able to turn things around. The season is obviously not over yet. So I'm just wondering, and I'm going off of what was frustrating tonight is I love Marco Gonzalez, but when your bullpen is struggling and you put out a pitcher there that at max is going to go 5 innings, that's kind of frustrating to me. Like you said, Mitch are not starting tomorrow is frustrating. But what is going to be, or what possibly could be, that spark plug, or what gets this team kind of going again? Because they were going, obviously, into the All-Star break. They were playing fairly well coming out of the All-Star break. They are in most of these games. Aside from, a 6-0 loss yesterday, but a lot of one-run games. But, I mean, what's going to be the difference here, Chris? I mean, I don't know if there's an answer, and it might be something I'm putting you on the spot here, but I'm just trying to think, like, what can the Pirates do?
Starting pitching starts with Jared Jones. He's got to come back and be the guy he was earlier in the year. Whether he was shut down or whether he was legit hurt, we don't know. We'll never know. The bottom line is we need to get him back in that rotation. Marco Gonzalez would be the perfect third left-handed pitcher in the bullpen right now that bullpen needs. Then you can think about bringing Jared Jones back to go Skeens, Keller, Bailey Falter, and whether it's Luis Ortiz or whomever it may be. I really like what's his face we just picked up from the White Sox. His name escapes me right now. He pitched in relief last night.
Oh, Woodford.
Yeah, I like what he's done for us, and both as a starter and a reliever. But I think it starts with starting pitching, and then on offense, you got to get healthy. You've got to get Nick Gonzalez back in this lineup. You've got to get O'Neill Cruz and everybody back on the same page, and you've got to be able to get some better production off the bench. And I think starting pitching will help the entire pitching staff. It'll help the bullpen, but you've got to let these guys pitch. You cannot hold these guys to 60 or 50 or 70 pitches. You've got to let them throw. And if you get to a situation where you're out of the race, then you can start worrying about shutting guys down or giving them extra rest. But you've got to let these guys pitch, get them in a rhythm, find out what these guys do best. Are they best on their 5th day? Are they best with extra rest? What are they best at? You mentioned Mitch Keller is best when he's in regular routine. That's number one, and go with it from there, because that's the only way this team is going to make a run at this is with their starting pitching, because that's what got them to the point where they're at when they got to a game and a half out. Nick Gonzalez doing what he's done to play with his clutch hitting and overall decent at bats. Other than that, that has got to find a way to get back. It may be too little, too late. I don't know, because right now Diamondbacks may be the best team in baseball. I mean, what they did today, sweeping the Guardians. And that's one of the 3 teams you're chasing the wild card. So we'll find out.
Yeah, I mean, the Arizona Diamondbacks know when to turn it on at the right time. I looked at it yesterday. They are the hottest hitting team in baseball. They have a 136 WRC plus. for people who like to follow the fan graphs and the analytics and stuff like that. So they are, the hottest hitting team in baseball. But Chris, this time goes by way too fast when you're talking baseball. We are 30 minutes of Bucks here. We will have to have you back on to do this again. Hope you enjoyed yourself. For those of you that don't, give Chris a little follow. Give him a wave there on Twitter. Once again, that is CRGWVU1. Chris, thanks for coming on. Can't wait to do this again.
Yeah, I got one more game. I'll be going up for the Mariners game on Friday the 16th. I get a 6-game package every year around my Legion Baseball schedule, which is busy. I just recently was named the state chairman for Legion Baseball in West Virginia. I've been the assistant for several years, so I'm now the state chairman, which keeps me busy as well in the summer. I just love being around the game of baseball. I do. Football starts in August. I'll worry about that later, but baseball's here. Bottom line is we're emotional. We're upset, but we're talking meaningful baseball for the first time since 2016 in Pittsburgh. Let's think about that before we go to bed. That is the one thing we're holding on to.